Good afternoon. I want to welcome you all. Today, our topic is safety, mental health, and well-being. This webinar is brought to you by the Office of System and School Improvement. Our objectives: what does mental health and well-being mean during school closure? Prepare for what comes next. Learn from the experts and identify resources to support educators, families, and students. My name is Bonnie Zimmerman. I'm a program specialist at OSPI. Today with us is Ann Gray, OSPI Behavioral Health and Suicide Prevention Program Supervisor, OSPI Mike Donlin, School Safety Program Supervisor, and Lee Collyer, OSPI Program Review Supervisor in Special Education. We're lucky to have them today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ann Gray, and I am the Program Supervisor for Behavioral Health and Suicide Prevention at OSPI. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to share with you. I'm going to focus primarily on resources. As a 30-year veteran in education, I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to serve our students and communities as a special education teacher, school counselor, building and district level administrator, and now I'm privileged to be part of the OSPI team. I never thought that in my lifetime I would experience anything like what we are living through now. Our students and our educators, our families are navigating uncharted waters. We all are. We know that many of our students are struggling with emotional distress, which is an area we'll talk a little bit about today during my resource sharing. And I know that they're struggling with isolation. They're struggling with separation anxiety. Some students are experiencing very complex and challenging home lives. School, I saw in the chat a couple comments about the challenge with school being the safe place for so many of our students. And at this time, they don't have that connection and resource as they did when they were in schools. So to that end, I'm going to begin to talk about resources. A resource I want to share with you that is really, really one that you can access in many different ways and is very simple to access and can provide all of our educators a great deal of resource in terms of supporting our students as they experience situations currently and as we begin to look at reentry. It is called the CARE module, and it can be accessed on the Suicide Prevention web page, which is a link on the OSPI website. And CARE stands for Confident Action and Referral by Educators. So this particular module can be taken individually. It can be taken as a group. It could actually be a professional development learning opportunity during these times. Could be done on Zoom through a screen share. It is available, as it states on the slide, to everyone who works with students in Washington State, from administrators to support staff. It takes about 1 hour. And there is very, very precise language, supported actions, specific language to working with students in emotional distress. Counselors, psychologists, social workers can, of course, take the course, but it does not meet the course requirement for certification or recertification. If you're interested in those particular courses, they can be found on the Professional Educator Standards Board website. Some of the areas that are discussed in our CARE module are educator perceptions when working with students experiencing emotional distress. There is a section around what is suicide to provide clarity to what is suicide. What do we consider suicidal behaviors, warning signs? Help-seeking behaviors are identified, recognizing the signs. There's a section on how do we recognize the signs, some information around looking at protective factors and risk factors. Our educator responsibilities are identified, and then resources for instructors. And there is a resource guide, a facilitator's guide that goes along with CARE that is very helpful in guiding discussion, questions, and continuing the conversation around prevention and intervention with regard to working with students who may be in distress, considering suicide. A lot of good information around communication with students and our role as educators. So the next area I want to share with you around resource is I've received lots of emails and communication around direct support for children and teens, and how can families access supports. One of many resources, but this is a very, very good resource, is Seattle Children's Mental Health Referral Service. And this particular service is a free telephone-based referral service. It's funded by the Healthcare Authority and operated by Seattle Children's. And a referral, when you call or you refer a family to call or a student to call, a specialist will talk with the family. If you don't get them directly, they will call you back. They will give you information on providers, agencies that meet the need that the family or the child is expressing a need for. They began the program in April 2019, and lots of requests. However, I have heard that they're very, very good about getting back and communicating 2 weeks later, I believe, a few weeks after the referral, getting back in touch with the family to make sure that the resources were accessed. So that is a very good referral service that you as educators can give to families and to children directly. The next resource I want to talk about is the OSPI resources for suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. To lead off talking about this particular resource, I want to share that in Washington State, death by suicide is the second leading cause of death for teens within the age range of 15 to 19 years. So this is a page that has very intentional resources helpful in identifying signs that require immediate action, when to respond, and supports for postvention. I want to share that comprehensive suicide prevention planning informs all adults and communities about how to intervene when a person is showing warning signs for suicide. There is a place for everyone. These resources are designed to help you as you look at prevention. Then you are working with a student who may need intervention, and then moving on to postvention. And postvention is the planned response to help promote healing and reduce risk. So that generally postvention we look at in terms of a first circle. When a community has experienced a death by suicide, generally the postvention resources we look at supporting family and friends. And then we move to supporting community and the media and beyond. So there's lots and lots of resources around postvention and the importance of postvention when a community has experienced death by suicide. We also have a new resource on the right side when you go onto the link that is specific to behavioral health resources, and we are updating that regularly during this time. We also have a COVID-19 OSPI page that has a link to student safety and student well-being with another very comprehensive list of resources that we are also making sure that we are updating on a regular basis. On this page, you'll also find the crisis line by county. There's a link to the crisis line by county. There's a link to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, link to CEL, the social emotional learning page at OSPI, can be linked from the suicide prevention. We have substance use prevention intervention link, as well as behavioral health and resource guide link. So it's a very comprehensive page with lots and lots of resources. There are sample safety plans on this page, as well as safety plans and links for screening tools. So how are we at OSPI currently engaging in support? We are continuously communicating with all of our agencies, the Department of Health, Healthcare Authority, DCYF, and our 9 educational service districts in sharing our resources and the support tools. We're talking about telehealth services, continuous support through HCA with Medicaid. Moving on, we're participating in webinars like this, sharing information out. Think tanks. There's a great series through the SMART Center called the Wellbeing series that we have put information about on our Facebook and social media pages, as well as in our resource links. I'm participating in our Joint Information Center communication calls around very specific to COVID-19 and our mental health and well-being supports. We share resources, we share ideas, different things that we're hearing out in the community, and coordinating responses. One of the initiatives that we're looking at that we know will be incredibly resourceful as we begin to plan for reentry as a result of legislation, each of our 9 educational service districts across the state will have a position called a behavioral health navigator. And we just completed the Children's Regional Behavioral Health Pilot is nearing its completion, and a very successful initiative. We will have an individual who's coordinating behavioral health supports for students, districts, and providing that linkage between schools, school districts, community health, and behavioral health supports. So we're very excited that this position will be available coming on board beginning in July. We are also planning through legislative funding to create mini grants for schools related to behavioral health and suicide prevention, as well as potentially some funding for districts and schools to utilize for postvention when they experience a death by suicide. So those are things that will be coming in the future as we begin to look at reentry. And finally, but certainly not of any less importance, we had MTSS, multi-tiered system of support, multi-tiered system BEST, highlighted a session where the discussion was around integrated systems framework, school mental health within the MTSS framework. That was a very quick run through of our resources.
We do have a couple of questions. So do you know what the current wait time is to get a call back from Seattle Children's Referral Line?
I haven't heard within the last couple of weeks. I do know that the callback response initially when we began this learning from home, when our schools went to the virtual world, the response time I heard back from a few individuals that I gave the referral source to, that it was within 2 to 3 days. So it was not immediate, but it was within 2 to 3 days at that point in time.
Great. One more question. Where can they find info on the behavioral health per district?
So you're talking about behavioral health resources per district?
I think that's what they mean.
Okay. Actually, the best place to look at to seek out behavioral health resources would be with your local ESD to get those resources. They can also feel free to email me directly and I will connect them as well.
Okay, great. Thanks. Mike? Great.
I'm Mike Donlin. I'm a program supervisor at OSPI with school safety. And sometimes people go, what? Why are you talking about this stuff right here, right now? And so I usually start off conversations around the kinds of things we have going on today, the kind of topics we have going on today with a couple of questions. And one is, you don't have to answer this right now, but just think about it. When we're talking school safety, you see that word, you hear that phrase, what does school safety mean to you? You in your function, in your position, what do you think of first when you hear school safety? And the second question is, have you been involved, you yourself in your capacity within your school, your district, have you been involved in development of your district or your school's comprehensive school safety plan, your EOP, emergency operations plan? And just to throw those in the back of your mind as we talk about the rest of the school safety topics we're going to hit on today. Now, one of the things that we have heard a lot of is talking about the new normal. And I like to put it in the context of we left what we had as normal. Right now, we're in a passing time. And whether you think of that as the time between periods of a day, the time between semester breaks, whatever, this is not our normal school time. And someplace down the road, we're going to be looking towards the new normal. And it's going to be up to us to help create that new normal, to re-engage our students, all the families, in different ways back to a situation where they're coming to school, perhaps. And how do we go about doing that, and what do we learn from what we're experiencing right now? This is a before and a during and an after, and as we're talking about school safety and school planning, that concept of before and during and after is a very important part of the planning process. So I'm just going to toss that out there right now. If we're thinking in terms of the safety and security of all of our staff, our students, our families, everybody involved in education, then in the normal time, we'd be talking about prevention and mitigation of things and then protection against stuff that comes along. And in a kind of a passing time like this, we might be thinking more in terms of protection, protecting our kids, our staff, our buildings, or so forth, and the response that we're giving to whatever the threat or the hazard is we're facing. And in this particular situation of COVID-19, we see national, international response to that kind of a situation. As we move into a new normal, we're talking about a recovery period. So what is our response and how does that lead to a recovery? I'm tossing the questions out here for you to hold in mind. And as we move forward, maybe some of them will clarify, maybe some of them will raise more questions for you. When we're talking about comprehensive school safety and school safety planning, we usually think of, we have to plan for that stuff. Did we plan for this? Did we plan for this COVID-19 pandemic? No, we really didn't. I think Ann mentioned that in one of her comments in her session, in her talk just a minute ago. This is the first time that any of us have ever experienced something quite like this. And Ann mentioned the number of years she's been in education. I got to tell you, I know exactly what she's talking about for that. It's been a long time, but I've never seen anything like this before. I had a conversation yesterday with colleagues around the country, and one of the comments that came out of this in terms of the do we plan and the before, during, and after, one of the comments that came up was, move into the new normal. We can probably expect to see the function of schools changing. How we do school, how we do education, how we provide services, all the things we're experiencing now will impact what goes on as we move forward into the future. Again, as we're talking school safety, we're talking all kinds of threats and hazards, and we're facing a huge one at the moment. But these school safety considerations, the threats and hazards, are the physical, the emotional, the psychological, the academic things that impact how our young folks learn, how we as educators teach, how we do the business of school. And quite honestly, when I asked the question in the beginning about what do you think of when you think of school safety, sometimes people do come up with the kinds of things we're talking about today, and sometimes they don't. But considering comprehensive school safety, we are looking at the suicide prevention efforts we have, the plan that's required, the threat assessment processes that we're moving forward across the state. A lot of the work that I do is around HIB, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, cyberbullying, and digital safety, shooters, earthquake preparedness, that drop, cover, hold stuff we do every fall when we have the Great Shakeout, and all kinds of other topics and issues that fall under the emotional, physical, psychological, and academic safety concerns. One of the things I like to think about is, wouldn't it be great if the most dangerous thing that a student had to face during the school day was raising his or her hand to answer a question and hoping that he or she got it right? But we know that that's not the case. There's a lot more going on than just simply that. As we're talking about these concepts around school safety, we've often heard and we often talk about and we often use the prevention intervention vocabulary. And larger picture, think, and actually, even as Ann was talking about earlier, the words that she used with the suicide prevention, intervention, postvention, and so forth, what we're looking at in real life is prevention, mitigation, protection, response, and recovery. And these all cycle. This is not a single one-stop deal. If these screenshots here were in color, the prevention and mitigation would be of more of the same color, looking at in terms of the before stuff. The kinds of things that happened before. Mitigation, protection, response leads into the during, and the response and recovery is the after phase. So it's a cycle of prevention, mitigation, protection, response, and recovery that we need to address as we're going through the preparation for all the things we have in place right now and the things we have ahead of us. Here's one that's kind of familiar. Ann was talking about the MTSS Fest. And I like to use this in terms of school safety in my mind and in my conversations. This is MTSS, meaning multiple tiers of school safety. Aha. So now we have MTSS specific to safety, and thinking in terms of the people that we're working with, kids, adults, moms, dads, teachers, administrators, parapros, bus drivers, kitchen workers, so forth, programs that we have in place, the specific curricula we're dealing with, procedures that we have, policies that are in place, all of them fit somewhere on this school safety pyramid. And thinking in terms of tier 1, for example, there are requirements to have school safety plans. There are requirements that we have policies and procedures for a whole slew of things that are involved with safety-related effort. We all do drills, some kind of drill and practice, and there's a mandate for certain kinds of drills that we have. Internet use policy. So the universal, that tier 1 kind of thing, covers a lot of the topics and issues that fall under social emotional learning, suicide prevention, bullying prevention, along with earthquake preparedness and all those other kinds of things that we deal with on a regular basis. In tier 2, the things that come to mind for me are things like threat assessment policies, threat assessment teams. Tier 1, sort of practices might go under tier 2. Do you have an SRO? That might be a tier 2 thing that you have in your school or your district. I'm just talking off the top of my head here because there are so many possibilities of things that might fall into your tier 1 or your tier 2 pyramid when you're thinking in terms of school safety. Tier 3, crisis response, crisis intervention, suicide intervention, suicide postvention, level 2 threat assessment, thinking in terms of our young folks. The students, all of our students fall into the tier 1, but who do you have in your populations who are more of a tier 2 population in terms of safety? Who might need special attention? Who might need the most special attention? Who might need special programs? So as you're thinking in terms of all the concepts around safety, remember that we do have requirements, we do have policies, we do have procedures, we do have young folks, we do have adults who fall someplace or other under this safety pyramid, and the MTSS here really does look at all those people, all those things in terms of the multiple tiers of school safety. Big ideas: plan, assess, and practice. Throw this out here because this is an opportunity for us to really take a chance, take the time and take the opportunity to look at and review what those current safety plans, processes, procedures that we have in place right now are, and particularly given the givens, what's missing? What do we need to not forget the next time we do this? On top of that big idea that says process over product, this is one of my big messages when it comes to developing safety plans and safety programs and things around your school. The process is more important than the product. Getting together your partners, your community partners, your first responders, your moms and dads, your faith communities, whoever you have in your community of colleagues who are developing your plan. It's the process of getting together and discussing those things and talking through, how do we do this here in our school? How do we do this in our district? How do we do this in my class? And I say process over product because once you're finished with your plan, it's time to start over. That plan is never fully complete because there are going to be changes in population, changes in weather, changes in demographics, you name it. There'll be changes as we move forward. In the assessment, this might be a nice opportunity, a nice time for us to consider all those different features of our educational process, our district, our school, our transportation system, our drop-off and drop-offs at the bus stops. Think about your school. What do you have at school? What are those things that you need to consider to build off of physically on the building itself? We're out of school right now, but we still have our students and we still have our staff. How's the climate and culture of your school? How's the climate and culture of your overall district? How do you assess that? What do you see that you can build on as you're planning for the larger safety pictures down the road? And then capacity. One of the things I think we skip over oftentimes is, for the staff we have, for the building we have, for the capacity we have in our building, who has particular skills? Where do we hide those fancy supplies that we need? We're talking about the PBEs right now. Where do we have the supplies in our school? How about food? How about Band-Aids? How about all those things that we can call upon for the road, down the road? And on the practice side of things, we're mandated to do certain kinds of drills, certain numbers and kinds of drills over the course of a year, once a month. It's kind of hard to do that to a certain extent, but maybe it's not. This may be a good chance for school staff, school administrators, to have some conversations among themselves around what are we going to do next? How do we do our fire drills? Is there a way to do them better? When it comes time to drop, cover, hold, what can we do? How can we make that engaging? Have some tabletop exercises among your staff, among the folks involved in your planning process, and also share those out with some of the things you do with the moms and dads, the families who are out there working with their kids at home. What can they do? How can they be involved in planning this down the road for the future? Scavenger hunt. As the kids are home and you're talking to the moms, teachers are talking to the moms and dads, have them look around for those things that are really cool, really safe, really dangerous. You know, mom and dad, you shouldn't leave those sharp knives on the counter. Anything that may be potential, thinking in terms of let's be safe as we move forward. The planning, we talked about that. Look at your current plans, check all your threats and hazards, prepare for the future, assess where you're at, practice things. But I think one of the most important things we can do at this time is to be very cognizant of, very aware, very mindful of what are we doing right now? What are we doing right now that's working that we can take back when we get to the new normal? Some of those things include the involvement of the families in distance education. That's something we can build on, maybe a different way. We can build on, we do a lot of Zoom meetings and trainings. We can build on that capacity. People have a better understanding. There's an awful lot that's happening now that we don't want to lose as we move into the new normal when that time comes. Resources, I've posted up here and listed here the School Safety Center resource. That is a work in progress even as we speak. There's an awful lot of information on the page, an awful lot of resources around safety planning, links to other places, other people. So one of the homework pieces that I provided is a link to a set of, it's the page on the Cyberbullying Research Center website, which has, I can't even tell you how many, probably a couple dozen or more handouts, two-page handouts that folks can use right now. We were doing a lot of things online, a lot of things are virtual. So how do we make sure that our young folks are safe, that we as the adults know how those safety features work, and that we can share with the moms and dads and everybody who's out there actually with the face-to-face hands-on teaching of our young folks right now to help make sure that our young folks and the adults stay safe online as we go through this passing time and move into the new normal. And with that, I will stop.
Thanks, Mike.
Hello, my name is Lee Collyer. I am a program supervisor for special education outcomes and student support. I work in student support on restraint and isolation. My background is as a social worker and a mental health practitioner and a program director of a pretty large school-based mental health program in the Bay Area in California. Prior to that, working for a few years as a practitioner and supporting adolescents in a therapeutic residential community. So I'm here to talk about future and then kind of give some helpful tips for what we can do right now. But I really want to break down the reality of where we're at and what's going to be happening for kids, because you guys are all in the middle of a crisis and you see it happening, and it's not going to get better when we go back or in the fall. Things are going to be more impacted and things are going to be really different. I think, but we have to acknowledge that we're going through a disaster right now. This is a disaster like we've never really seen. And the economic impacts won't be experienced immediately. It's going to be a long drag over time, and we're going to experience displacement for families. There's a lot of potential to things that really could happen that will dramatically impact families, let alone just being removed from the social school environment and being removed from the daily routine the way kids have is going to have a genuine impact on trauma, on children's stress levels. So children who are experiencing emotional and behavioral difficulties before, there'll probably be more children experiencing emotional and behavioral difficulties as this goes on. That top tier is going to get weighed down a bit. So the thing that I'm here to say, I guess, is that no two disasters are alike. You can't really compare apples and oranges. I'll talk a little bit about Katrina and what happened after that. We can use that as kind of a test case. But again, every disaster is different, and multiple factors go into how someone is impacted. I'm a person of pretty reasonable privilege, and my daughter is someone who doesn't have a disability, but she's going to be really dramatically impacted by this experience. This will possibly impact the rest of her life in ways that I could never have predicted prior to this, but just because of her generalized anxiety. She's going to really be impacted by this for a long time, and you wouldn't know by looking at her or looking at us. Kids are going to come back to schools or back to whatever school looks like in the fall, and they're going to need teachers and support staff to be even more there for them than you already were, which sounds incredibly overwhelming, I'm sure. They're going to look for teachers to be signs of encouragement, for stability, and the school is going to be seen as a model for how we're all doing. When the school is back in session and partially in session, that's going to be a sign that we're all partially in session. It's going to be a real barometer for how things are and what they're doing and how we work together through all this. And our continued collaboration with our community partners to support our schools is going to be even more important. So what we see 5 years after Katrina, we saw that children who were displaced by the Katrina hurricane were 4.5 times more likely to have symptoms consistent with serious emotional disturbances than other kids in Louisiana. Kids were removed from school for about 9 months on average, and in the city of New Orleans specifically. 45% of parents said their children were experiencing emotional or psychological problems that they did not have prior to Katrina. 52% of parents who thought their children needed professional help for these problems did not receive it. So what we can say is this is a much bigger thing impacting more families that we can't really tell what's going on a lot of times because there's a certain number of families who we are disconnected from, who will be transitioning, who will be moving around, and support for them is going to be that much more important moving forward. So what are we going to see? We're going to see in young children, so our early education, sense of helplessness, fear, irritability, seeking affection, or being clingy. In our older, sort of latency children in elementary, we're going to see preoccupied talking about the event, diminished concentration, sadness, fear of recurrence. And in our adolescents, a sense the world is less safe, high-risk behaviors, social anxiety, and feelings of being overwhelmed. And I post these just to say, make sure that our interventions are developmentally appropriate, and we see these signs as symptoms, as predictable behavior after an event like this. My fear is that we're going to try and punish our way out of some of these behaviors when we don't have strong multi-tiered systems of support set up and we don't have strong positive behavior programs set up prior to getting back to school. We're going to fall into old ways of trying to discipline our way out of trauma. And that's going to be wildly ineffective and get us many more problems in the end. So what can we do now? I hear constantly, how do we support families? What can we do? And Dr. Bruce Perry, expert in childhood trauma, wrote a book called A Boy Raised as a Dog, which is really a seminal work in exploring the impact of complex trauma on children. He did a presentation a few weeks ago and gave these tips for supporting families. And these are going to seem obvious to some extent. Structure your day. Tips to how to structure days, giving parents routines, guides, schedules, even breaking it down and just encouraging people to stick to that structure so kids can have some predictability. Predictability reduces symptoms of stress and trauma. Have family meals, eating together. Eating meals together is actually incredibly important. It takes time to slow down, to take temperatures of kids, see where they're at, what they need for the next day, what they need for the next period of time, and in general. Limiting media. You should do that most of the time, but this is an especially important time to scrutinize children's media diet. Be aware of what they're taking in. Particularly too much information about what's happening right now or information that will potentially stress them out more and scare them that isn't sort of monitored and adults are talking through with them could be potentially really dangerous and increase levels of stress again. Exercise. To reduce stress in children, they need to access sort of relational tools most of the time. And the only way to do that is actually often to get their bodies moving. So walking, swinging, any repetitive movement behavior is incredibly important. Reaching out and connecting. I know we're all trying to do that and continuing to do that, and then giving students a chance to reach out and connect themselves with each other and space to do that. That there are any opportunity we can to create connection with them, the main thing they've lost, is incredibly important. And any chance we can have them to help others, to practice helping others, and to gain power in the home or about things they can do throughout the day in their own home to gain mastery as well as self-worth and reduce stress by helping others. Incredible tool. Good sleep hygiene. Again, this feels like goes out the window because there's no school tomorrow, but there is. It's sort of in my house. But continuing to monitor children's sleep and encouraging an actual bedtime that exists in reality and encouraging the 8 to 10 hours that's required for all children, and then staying positive and future focused is incredibly important, and reminding people that this will be over and we will get through this and that we're all going through this together. And those are my slides.
First, I want to thank Ann, Mike, and Lee. That was really helpful information. We have so many questions that we're not going to be able to get to all of them. And I want to be honest here, we don't have answers for all of your questions. There are many questions about what fall will look like if there are budget cuts and how it'll impact SEL. And those are things that we can't answer at this time. Some district or school leaders might think it's just too hard to engage families and community members in safety plans or reopening plans for 2021. What would the panelists say to address this line of thinking? Is there an opportunity to engage families and community members differently? I don't know, Mike, that sounds like it might be a good question for you.
My first response to that is what I've noticed, what I'm noticing, what I've seen, whether they love it or not, families are much, much more engaged in the day-to-day actual K-12 educational process than they have been in the past. I know I've had kids and sent them to school, and now I see my own grandson going to school at home with his mom. And I see her connecting up with her school, the teacher, the larger school, whenever they have the Zoom meetings. And it seems as though this is one of those areas where, because we have necessarily so much more day-to-day contact in the process of educating our young folks with the moms and dads, the parents, the grandparents, the older brothers and sisters, whoever it may be, may well be a perfect opportunity to jump in and say, let's talk about some of those things we're doing in terms of planning for re-engagement, planning for reopening, planning for the future safety within our schools. And on the other side of the coin, I'm going to be writing a brief article about this coming up soon too. When I was thinking about doing stuff like SEPTED walks around schools. SEPTED is when you, in a nutshell, walking around campus or walking around a facility and looking for those points that need to be taken care of, those danger points, those places branches that need to be trimmed, glass that needs to be picked up, whatever the case may be. But doing something like that, sending something like that home to the moms and dads and saying, what can we do around here? What do we look around here to do? What do we have? Let's have a scavenger hunt to find the safety things, to find the best places to go in case there's a fire in the house. How do we know those kinds of things? So use this current situation to build on what we would like to see thought out and thought through for the future. And we do have a fairly captive audience of families out there who are online with us just about every day. So I think it might be just the opposite. It might be an opportunity to do that without burdening people and saying, you got to do this right now, but just to toss the issues and the questions out there for folks.
Great. Thank you, Mike. That's a good answer. Here's one. Does anyone use an SEL online format during distant learning that helps kids deal with their emotions and trauma?
Yes, these programs do exist. They are being used. The Washington Insight, the Washington Virtual School, has one that they use. I'm not familiar with the content, so I can't advocate for them, but there are online virtual SEL programs that are being utilized in the state of Washington. It's just not my expertise area, and I can't speak to it directly.
Thanks.
The CEL website may also have some information.
Thank you, Anne. Another really thoughtful question. Is there any thought around mental health support for educators who will be supporting students through this?
I've seen and I've been reading a lot of information around self-care for adults in this particular situation and how that impacts, how that translates into, again, the care of our young folks and how it all fits together.
Yeah, there's Kaiser Permanente Thriving Schools program. Jill Padnode is heading that up. They had a pilot in Central Kitsap this past year, and it looked specifically at this issue of teacher wellness and burnout. And I would definitely look at Kaiser Permanente's Thriving School program.
Good, thank you. How about for the families? There are families that are so stressed right now with no child care, teaching their kids at home, some losing their jobs, and many having to move because of loss of housing. What are some ideas to manage this when schools start?
We need to know what school's going to look like in the fall before we can answer that question.
I would just add to that, school counselors are going to be an incredible resource as we return to school and that occurs. I think having spoken to many of them over the past few weeks, I think they are going to be very important go-to people, questions along those lines.
Okay, great. So here someone is saying that their district is using Second Step at the elementary level for online SEL curriculum for families to use at home. Thank you, Colette. That's great. We do try to offer best practices. We are in new territory. We're working through this just as fast as we can. And I know that the people at OSPI in every different department within the agency is working overtime, practically trying to provide resources for families and teachers. And we really appreciate you attending our webinars. We hope that you can get at least one or two tips out of each one. Here's a question. Is it possible to teach the kids and educators the ASL language of safety so that kids can ask for help if they're in an unsafe environment?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's a challenge, but also on the receiving end of that, because our educators are working remotely and don't see the kids face to face as they used to, being responsive to those things that come your way, that's a challenge.
Yes, we do have some resources. Seattle Children's Mental Health Referral Service for Children and Teens. We have OSPI resources for suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. For educators, we have School Safety Center and the Confident Action and Referral by Educators, or CARE. MTS Vest highlighted a session titled Integrated Systems Framework, School Mental Health within MTSS Framework. Again, my name is Bonnie Zimmerman. We had Ann Gray, Mike Donlin, and Lee Collyer. This is our contact information. If you have more questions, please feel free to contact us and we'll see if we can get you an answer. And everything except for where otherwise noted, this work by the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction is licensed under a Creative Commons. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us today.